The San Francisco 49ers had until 4 p.m. Eastern today to trade or release quarterback Colin Kaepernick. If they didn't, his $11.9 million base salary for next season becomes fully guaranteed. Now, Kaepernick is reportedly unhappy in San Francisco and asked to be traded after getting benched for Blaine Gabbert last season. Both the Broncos and the Jets have been linked as potential trade destinations, but Kaepernick would likely have to restructure his contract to make it work. For the latest, let's bring in NFL Network insider Ian Rappaport and NFL Network's Mike Silver. Hello, guys. Ian, the deadline has passed. What happened?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing happened, which really was the expected response here, because we have known really for the last several weeks that the 49ers were not going to cut Colin Kaepernick. Now, the reason why this was important was because according to his contract, if Colin Kaepernick is on the 49ers roster on April 1st, then his $11.9 million base salary becomes fully guaranteed. The only way that he will not be on the roster on April 1st is if they had cut him before today. So they did not do that. He now will officially be on the roster. However, this doesn't mean that Colin Kaepernick will not be traded. It simply means that his base salary can now become fully guaranteed. And he now weighs the question, if a trade does materialize, does he want to take the roughly $12 million base plus $2 million extra dollars in incentives from the 49ers, or does he want to go somewhere else, potentially the Broncos, for a pay cut? That is now the reality for Colin Kaepernick, and it does seem that the draft is the next time we're going to have a deadline for a potential deal, so we'll probably be talking about it then too, Mike.
Yeah, and Ian, let's circle back a little bit because this has been going on since the start of the league year. Colin Kaepernick's agents asked the 49ers for a trade back at the Combine. When the Broncos lost Brock Osweiler, John Elway reached out to the 49ers, told them he thought Colin Kaepernick's value was a fourth-round pick, which was complicated because the Broncos did not have a tradable fourth-round pick of their own. They started negotiating with Kaepernick's agents. They felt pretty comfortable about the numbers because, remember, he does not have an odious contract from a team perspective. It is essentially a year-to-year deal. They thought that an adjustment would have been something the two sides could work out. Then the Cleveland Browns got in. They were more insistent on Colin Kaepernick taking a major pay cut, but the compensation issue, they were more amenable to, say, parting with a third-round pick. So all of that was going on. Then once Hugh Jackson saw Robert Griffin III work out, he was blown away and was off of Colin Kaepernick once and for all. The Browns ended up signing RG3, so that left a stare down between the 49ers and the Broncos. So far, the stare down continues. But as you said, Ian, this deadline does not necessarily mean that a trade is dead. And I think you'll see as we get closer to the draft, and certainly on the first night of the draft, if a deal is there to be made, and it may make sense still for both sides, I believe that's when we'll see critical mass.
All right, so you're right, Mike, and there's a couple scenarios that could play out as we head toward the draft. So we know, of course, the Broncos have the 31st pick. Maybe they are targeting a quarterback there, and we'll know on the Thursday night of the draft if they do get the quarterback. If not, then all of a sudden we'll get a little bit of drama on Friday, because then the Broncos will know, one, whether or not they missed out on their quarterback, and two, is it going to be time to get rid of their second-round pick and send that to the 49ers for a potential deal? And, of course, their second-round pick is similar to a lot of teams' third-round pick because it's so late because they won the Super Bowl. So that is why this could come up again during the draft. And by the way, you mentioned the potential pay cut. Trying to figure out where Colin Kaepernick's salary could be in the minds of the Broncos. Look at the Eagles deal for Chase Daniel. That's about $7 million. The Browns deal for RG3 is a little less than $7 million. So it would make sense if the Broncos see Kaepernick as a stopgap starter who could potentially wrestle for a job with a couple other guys on the roster. It would make sense that that $7 million figure is about in his wheelhouse. A huge pay cut for Colin Kaepernick, which would make one wonder, does he want to make, say, $14 million from the 49ers or maybe $7 million from a team like the Broncos?
The Niners, Mike, the Niners themselves have the seventh pick in the draft at this point. I mean, Right now they have Blaine Gabbert. They also have Colin Kaepernick. But what are the chances they take a quarterback at number 7 because one of the top guys would be there?
Well, I'm not sure that one of the top guys would be there if you considered there to be a clear top 2, which most people do, in Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. I actually don't believe that there will be a quarterback there at 7. That would not preclude the 49ers from trying to trade up. But I do know that general manager Trent Baalke is exceptionally high on Blaine Gabbert, who once upon a time was a top 10 pick and flamed out in Jacksonville, but did a decent job for them after Colin Kaepernick got benched last year. And they think it's a great story. A guy who struggled getting thrown into the fire early, but has now started to figure it out. So I think that gives the 49ers a little bit of a comfort zone. The question is Chip Kelly, a guy who known for his work with quarterbacks in the college game and who had success early on with Nick Foles in Philadelphia. That's the guy you hired to be your coach. What does he think? And I keep coming back to the fact that though Colin Kaepernick's agents did ask for a trade, this is a guy who on paper would seem to be very well suited to Chip Kelly's system. He's mobile. He obviously has the arm strength. He can throw on the run. And so if I'm Colin Kaepernick, as Ian said, I'm looking at maybe $14 million to compete with Blaine Gabbert and possibly resurrect my career in a system with Chip Kelly that should be suited to my talents. Or do I want to go play, yes, for the Super Bowl champion, but in the shadow of Peyton Manning's legacy, nowhere to go but down in Denver for $7 million a year. Now, maybe the Broncos would realize that Colin Kaepernick at $10 million a year might not be a terrible deal relative to, say, Brock Osweiler at 17, 18, which they were unwilling to pay.